Hey everybody. So before I start this next video, I just want to let everyone know kind of what's going on. The video isn't shot in a way that I normally do. There are some aspects that, are the same, but this is a knife that belongs to a subscriber to the channel. And it is a lot like the problems that I had with my AVNT. And so we were talking about it, in one of the comment sections of the video, and I told him to send it to me so I can work on it for him. And so the video that I've shot is more just me documenting the work that I'm doing on a subscriber's knife so that they can see everything that I'm doing. There's a lot of edits in there. There's, me kind of pausing the video and stepping away to polish something or whatever, and then coming back to show them, what I've done and how I'm putting it back together and how we solved all the problems that this knife had. And so if, people want to watch this video and they get something out of it, it was really successful. So when I first got this knife, it basically had lock rock, and it had a really grindy action, and there was some things that had been done to it that I kind of found, and so we were able to solve all of that. And so now the action is very smooth, and he still retained his ability to do like a reverse flick and use the flipper tab and everything else. And so this knife is very smooth now, and it has none of the problems that it did when I first got it. And so this video was a complete success, but I just want to kind of warn everyone, this isn't like a normal Cynical 6, knife review or knife, takedown video, or, any of the cinematic excellence that I usually strive for. This is not that. This is me documenting the work that I'm doing on a subscriber's knife for them. And you're welcome to come along for the ride, but it's not going to be like what you normally see on this channel. So I just kind of want to let everyone know, before we start this video. So thank you very much. Hey everybody. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be looking at another AVNT. All right, so for those of you that don't know, this is my AVNT, right? This is by Left Concepts. This is the knife that Left Concepts started their company with. This was their first design. They didn't build this in-house or anything like that. They didn't start their company in a garage here in the United States or whatever. They formed a company, they had a knife design, and they immediately went to a overseas OEM to get it produced. And so this one was a Riot-made knife, and I saw it and I was excited to get it because, I love the way this looks. But this knife showed up with some problems. It took me a while to figure out what was happening, but kind of the long and the short of it is it would grind really badly. And this has a detent ramp in it, like from the factory. But it would grind when the detent ball was leaving that detent ramp, which is right now it's started down the detent ramp, and then about halfway through the detent ramp it would start grinding like horribly, and you could feel it, and it was terrible action. So I didn't understand what was going on, and I took it apart and I started doing all kinds of things, everything I could think of. The last thing that I did was I realized that the detent ball was set way down inside of its hole where it's mounted into the lock bar. And so it was never, and you could see the traverse line in the detent ramp, and you could see it disappear halfway through. And so that told me that that detent ball never stood a chance of, traversing that whole detent ramp and making a smooth action. And so my thinking this whole time was that Riot must have made that detent ramp, too deep, or put the wrong size detent ball in there or something, because when I got this, it was terrible. So I have since fixed this. The only thing that I have left on this knife is a little bit of, it's not even lock stick, but it's kind of a little lock squeak. But I had to, because of the things that I had done to it, it caused a little bit of lock rock. And I never had any detent lash or anything like that, but I did have lock rock. And so I had to increase the tension on the lock bar to a point where it would take care of that, right? But that was kind of self-induced. I think in the very beginning, if I had realized that it was a detent ball issue, I could have taken care of that. And I never would have had, changed this kind of aspect here where the lockup is, and then kind of caused lock rock. But I knew I could fix it because basically the lock rock, just a standard deployment on the blade. So if you flip the blade open, that detent bars or locking bar is going to go as far in as it's going to go. And then I had a little bit of lock rock. And if you push on the lock bar assembly just a little bit, it would go away. So I knew that I just needed to increase that. But in increasing that fixed that problem. But it also put so much pressure, the detent ball in its little detent hole up on the blade tang, that I lost the ability to use my back flipper. And so I was kind of settled for that, in my mind, I had fixed the knife. I got the grind, I reset the detent ball in the lock bar, and I raised it up and got it to stay there. And it's still there to this day, so I don't think it'll ever go anywhere. I was able to solve the rock issue, but I thought, okay, if I can do all that and I can make this where I can basically use this knife, if I have to sacrifice my flipper, then that's kind of okay. And then just about 2 weeks ago, I was thinking about this knife again, and I thought, okay, I've increased this tension so much because I need this lock bar to be farther over this way and engage that blade further to get rid of that lock rock. I need that here, but I don't need that tension where the detent ball is sitting in its detent hole on the blade, because that's what was keeping me. It was so much tension in that hole that it was keeping me from using the flipper. So the way I fixed that was I took the little detent hole, and I didn't put a ramp on the detent hole or anything like that. It was nothing extreme. I just broke the edge a little bit, so the detent ball would have an easier time getting out of that detent hole. And so the second I did that, and it looks fine, like you can't really even tell. I've got super small files now, and so I just put it down there and I just kind of worked it a little bit in the direction of the detent path, the little traverse path. And the second I did that, it released enough tension and it made it possible to get out of that hole and release the blade to deploy with my flipper. So now I basically have all of this back together, and I'm just working on a little bit of lock. Like I said, it's not really lock stick, but I'll see if I can make it. I don't know if you could hear that. So it just makes a little tiny squeak. But it's not, that it's not that smooth or anything like that. Like, I can live with that. And the longer that I, manipulate this knife and deploy the blade, that will eventually go away, I believe. And so it was a long road, but I was able to save this knife, right? The only thing I will say is, because I do have a lot of tension on the blade from the lock bar, I will never have like a super drop shut action. It's always going to be, like a one shake. But I've got this knife as smooth as, it's ever going to be. So I did a video on that, and one of the viewers on the channel saw that video, and he kind of chimed in and said, I'm having the same problem with mine. And so this is his knife. And he was telling me about it, and I said, man, send it to me. I'll take a look at it. I can fix this. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't call myself an Avant Pro now or anything, but there was a lot that was going on with mine, and I feel pretty confident that, you know, I'd be able to fix any Avant that anybody sends to me now. And so he was like, yeah, man, I'm going to send it. So he sent his knife, and he actually included another knife for It's Another Left Concepts that I've never seen or handled, just to review. And so before I start on his knife, I just want to thank that viewer. That is an immense amount of trust. You know, I don't know you and you don't know me. And as far as, you know, you're concerned, I'm just some dude on the internet saying, yeah, send me your knife. So that's a lot of trust that you've, you know, placed. And I really do appreciate it. So I'm going to do everything I can to fix this. I took it out of the package just a little while ago and kind of looked at it. That's when I sent you that text. And so there's a couple things right off that I see. So I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be going through this knife and I'm going to do all the things. You got a little pocket clip rattle here, and so I'm going to take care of that. And I will say, when I first saw that pocket clip, it kind of looks like a Spyderco pocket clip. And I think because this was originally a wire clip, it's just like the ones on the Spydercos. And so any retrofitted pocket clip that's made to exchange one of those wire clips, I think will fit on this knife. And so if I'm not mistaken, this is a Spyderco deep carry, you know, pocket clip. And so I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. But I will say it matches these little pivot collars perfectly. And so I kind of like that look. You know, it's kind of a light gray, dark gray kind of thing. And then the grind on the blade, I will say, isn't mine different? Yeah, so I've got like a horizontal grind on mine, and you actually have a vertical grind. And so that's kind of strange. Other than that, I would say these are really close to being the same. I don't really see a difference. There's a little difference in the plunge grind on yours. It comes off your blade window and it kind of comes down. And mine is, it looks like it's more of a straight angle. It is curved a little bit, but not quite as much as yours. But you've got that vertical grind, and then for whatever reason, mine is the horizontal grind. So that's kind of cool. And it's weird. I'm so glad you sent this, because I was gonna buy another one of these for like whatever. You know, I found one for 250 bucks. I found a decent one for 350 bucks. I just wanted to put my hands on another one because I had so much problem with mine that I wanted to see if there was any inkling, you know, as to why it happened, or if it's just a thing. And apparently it's just a thing. So I guess this is just what Riot was doing at the time for Left Concepts. They were just like kicking these out, and they weren't doing a very good job. So right off the bat, before I take this apart, the pocket clip needs adjusting, and I would say the detent needs to be increased a little bit, because I can do a reverse flick on this knife. The pivot is a little tight, and so we're going to take care of that. There is no side-to-side play, but you do have a little lock rock, right? So it is kind of going this way. But I'm going to increase your detent just a hair, just to, you know, kind of improve your blade deployment with your flipper, or with your blade window. Your flipper actually works really nice. And so I wish mine was that smooth. And you still have kind of the same, you know, shake shut that I've got on mine. I will say this is a really light blade, and so to get like, you know, a hydraulic shut on this knife, I know it's not possible on mine. It still could be possible on this one, and so I'm going to try for that. But the other thing that it's doing is kind of the same thing that mine did. And so basically, when you're deploying the blade, and the detent ball is about to start its traverse through that little ramp. I will say this ramp, I think I must have polished mine, because this ramp I can feel that it's a little grindy, and you can feel it kind of traverse through there. But then right there, it reaches the end. And so it's wanting to get lifted out of that detent ramp. And so it's kind of bottoming out on the frame. And so I believe, without taking this apart, but we're going to just here in just a second, that you've got the same problem with your detent ball as I had. I think it's probably a very small detent ball, and it's pressed into your lock bar directly without a lock bar insert, and it is down too far. There is no raising that up and then resetting it in that same hole, because it's obviously it has to be a little more than half the total distance for the detent ball height to stick in that hole, and that's not enough. So it either needs to be a larger detent ball altogether, or you mount it like mine, where I kind of did a golf tee kind of thing. So I popped it out of there, and I used a 2-component epoxy, and I just sat it right on top of its little hole, just like a golf ball sitting on a tee, and I let it sit for 24 hours, and that mine is good to go. And it gave me another probably a half height distance again, so it's like 1.5 times as high as it was instead of being where it is. And so that really worked well. But I think that's what's going on with yours, is right now that detent ball is just starting down the ramp, and I can feel it, and then it bottoms out right there. And so the rest of the blade deployment is just scraping the blade tang on the side of the lock bar, and that's what we're going to solve. And then when I fully deploy the blade, it locks up, but you get just a hair, and you don't really have a lot of lock rock. Like, this is not a lot, but we're going to be able to take care of that with just adjusting this. And it's kind of a good thing, because it's going to make your blade window deployment, your reverse flick, a lot crispier. And so I think this is going to be, besides the detent ball repair, all this other stuff is going to be pretty straightforward. So we're going to go ahead and get into this now. I'm going to pause this video just really quick and grab something, and I'll be right back. Okay, so basically the first thing we're going to do is take this down completely, and I want to look at that lock bar and detent ball assembly and see if it's as low as I think it is, and if it is scraping like I think it is around that detent ball. And these are all T8s, including the pivot, and they all look pretty good. So I think on this one, let's see. So I do have to, these have nested liners, and so this whole, I guess this is titanium, mine's brass. This titanium feels a lot lighter. I want to weigh this actually before we get going and compare it to mine, because I'm excited to compare it to mine, because, like I said, I was going to buy one. So his weighs 4.1, and that is titanium, and mine is a heavy bitch, and so it's 5.4. So yeah, I like that one better. So anyway, I'm going to have to take this pocket clip off, because this screw is directly threaded into the liner beneath it, and so I wouldn't be able to get that scale off the outside. So we're going to take that out, and then we're going to take the body screws out, and he's got a gray titanium back spacer there, which I gotta say looks pretty good. I like this kind of silver and gray, or like light gray and dark gray. I like that whole colorway. It looks pretty good. All right, so you got your 2 body screws right there. And then we're going to take this pivot out. And it's going to be meat and potatoes time. All right, there's the pivot. So this should pop right off, I believe. Yep. Okay. So yeah, that's exactly the same thing. And so you can see on the end of his lock bar assembly where it's been scraping. all over. And I don't know if that is, it could have been where, you know, it might have been tried like a repair or something like that. But trust me, that's exactly the same thing that I did with mine. And there is no repairing it. The only way to repair it is to move that detent ball up. And you can see how shallow it is. Like that is a little tiny detent ball, and it barely sticks up there. And then we're going to look at that detent ramp here in just a second. And I'll bet you money that we're going to see a traverse line that goes from the top of the blade tang, and it starts down inside that ramp, and then it just disappears because this is lifting it out of there. So that's kind of a shame. I wish that Riot had just, you know, sized that appropriately. That would have been awesome. And it would have avoided all of this mess. But that's exactly what's going on. So it's kind of the same exact thing that mine did. And shame on you, Riot. So, yeah. We're going to be driving that pin out of there, or that ball out of there. There is also, it feels like there's a burr on the backside that doesn't really affect anything. And I'm not going to adjust this detent yet, because essentially I'm going to adjust the detent when I change the height of this detent ball. And so it would be exactly the same as, you know, leaving the ball there and moving this lock bar in and out, as it will be leaving the lock bar there and moving that ball in and out. You know, it's attached to the same thing. So I'm not going to mess with this yet. Once I get this ball out of here and we put it back and let it sit, then I'll put it all back together and I'll be able to see, you know, if I need to further adjust this. I think I probably will, because I need to solve his lock rock problem, but I don't want to do too much at once, you know, because moving this detent ball is not going to solve the lock rock problem at all. It is just going to solve, you know, the grinding that he's getting. So we're just going to do one thing at a time. His little blade stop pin right there, that popped out. So we're going to put that over here. And then we're going to pull this blade. And I can't remember if my bearings look essentially like this, or if these might even be skiffs. But that's what he's got going on. They're fully caged. And so we're going to set those over here next to their washers. And then I'm going to clean this up a little bit, and we're going to take a look. Looks like that detent ball hole has had a little work on it too. And let's see. All right. So it looks like the detent ball hole does look a little different than mine. And so I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but it looks like it's been widened a little bit, right? And so before, when I first started, I could feel like a little bit of detent lash, and it could be that that is what's causing that. So I really need to look at mine, and I can't see it without taking the blade apart, or the knife apart. But I don't believe mine had, you know, a widened hole like that. And it definitely has been. And it almost looks like it's kind of symmetrical all the way around. So it almost looks like something round kind of went in, instead of like the way I did mine, where I came in from the side, just where that detent ball track kind of ends in its little hole. I just took this file and went in at like this angle basically, and then kind of broke that edge a little bit, because I just needed it to be able to hop out onto the blade tang easier, right? But this one looks like it's a little different. So I'm not sure what happened to that, but it is kind of widened all the way around. So what I hope, he doesn't have a lot of detent lash. It's like very minimal. And I think if I raise that ball up higher, it's going to go deeper into this hole a little bit. And so, I may end up having to break the edge of his too, to get his flipper action back. But I'm hoping that it's going to solve his detent lash. I'm not sure because that detent ball hole is pretty big. And you can see like it looks freshly, like you can see all the way around, like something just got in there and kind of, opened it up a little bit. So I don't know what's going on with that, but we're going to give it a shot. So that is what it looks like. Oh, and then I wanted to look and see if, yeah, sure enough. So if you look really close, you can see where that detent ball track goes down inside, and it's kind of hard to see because there's an edge there. But let me see if I can, that's not going to work for you. But I can actually see right where it stops. So that traverse line kind of goes down this way, and now I'm blinded by my flashlight. And it's kind of shiny. And so it comes down and it's making a shiny area inside that detent ramp, and then it stops like right here. It stops a little over halfway through, and I can see it end. And then there is no line continuation on where it spills out of the ramp. So that's exactly what's going on. That detent ball is just too small for this ramp. And that is Riyadh's fault. So there's his blade. And we're going to set that right there. And then this side isn't really going to see any action at all. I don't see anything wrong. Like, I'm going to shine everything up when I put it all back together. And I'm going to have this knife apart, probably a few times. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave this with its bearing and everything just kind of sitting over here next to my, so just so everybody knows, I finally found my 3rd Marine wing coin. I've looked for this for a year and I couldn't find it anywhere, and I finally found it. So that's what I was attached to, the USMC 3rd Marine Air Wing, and I'm really glad to have that back. So I hope you guys like it, because that's where it's going to sit. All right, so now what we're going to do is, the first thing that I want to do is go ahead and take this detent ball out of here, and we're going to reset it. So that's going to be fun. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to work in a plastic bag. And so I'm going to use, this is just like a little lanyard bead, and it is going to sit inside the bag. And then I'm going to put this on top of it, where the detent ball will fall in the middle of it. And then I've got this, and actually this is the same thing that I used on mine. This used to be like, have a pretty sharp tip on it. And so I just clip that off, and that goes right in that detent ball hole, just like that. And then I just tap it like 2 or 3 times, and it pops right out. I tried that on mine, and then I tried putting it back in there, just so, and like squeezing it just perfectly and whatever. There is no adjustment inside this detent ball hole right here in the lock bar that will allow that detent ball, that size, to work. So it has to sit up, kind of like I've got mine sitting. So anyway, that's what we're going to do now, and it doesn't take long. So I'm going to take this plastic bag, which used to have fire extinguisher keys in it, and now it does not. And so I'm going to set this here, and I already checked it. There's no holes, but you kind of have to do this because that is a little tiny detent ball, and it will go bouncing across the floor, and I will never find it. And then I'm going to be buying another AVNT to replace this one for the guy that sent it to me. And I'll probably have to fix that one before I send it, because apparently all Riyadh's AVNTs just kind of suck. And so I'm going to get this kind of set up just like this. And I'm going to make sure that that is going to drop free right there. And then I'm going to grab my Leatherman. And his is in there pretty good, actually. Mine just kind of popped right out. I can't tell if that actually moved it. I think it did, actually. So I wonder if his was just like in there too far. I mean, it's not a lot. I don't think it moved it enough. I'm almost positive it didn't. I mean, I definitely moved it, but it doesn't look like it moved it far enough where it's going to make a huge difference and stop all of this nonsense. So I am going to go ahead and just take it all the way out. So we're going to put this back and we're going to get it kind of set up in there. And we're going to do it again because this will work. I know it will work. Just like that. All right. Okay. Well, mine tapped right out. And his is really in there, which is okay because we're going to get it out of there. And the other thing that I had to make sure of when I did mine is to make sure that I'm putting it, because I'm tapping the ceramic ball. And I didn't want a chance putting a scratch on there that's also, if I turned it the wrong way when I reassembled it and it's traversing, and it's not as smooth. And so I made sure to, turn it the right way and get the smooth side up before I, kind of use that glue in place. That is out further, I believe. I almost want to put it back together and try it. I don't think it's out far enough, though. I'm pretty sure. Because it's like half of that depth of that detent ramp. And I moved it a little bit, but not to the point where it's going to solve all the problems. So we're just going to keep going because this will pop out of here eventually. I need kind of a hammer would be better. I can't remember if I used this on mine last time or if I had like an actual hammer. So it should go. Well, it's still hanging in there. All right, we're going to reassemble it and see if it made any difference at all. And if it didn't, then basically I'm going to do the same thing that I just did, but I'm actually going to tap it with something bigger. because I swear to God, mine took like 3 little taps like that and it popped out and it landed right in that little jig that I had sitting underneath it. And this one is not doing that. It's not held in place in any other way, and so, you know, it has to work. Wonder if I could tell just by holding this up if it made a difference. So I've got right there. No, it still bottoms out. You can kind of see it. So basically, if I hold this and I put this detent ball right here and I get it close to its ramp and I hold it flat, just like this. And so right now it's on top of the blade. And then where's that ramp? There it is. So yeah, I can still feel it dragging and I can feel it lift off of the ramp. So right there it's touching the bottom of the ramp and everything is cool. And then when I get it to like right here, oh yeah, you can feel it like it's total grit. And it's still got quite a ways to go before it falls off of the blade tang. And so, yeah, we're definitely going to have to take it out. So I'm going to pause the video again and find a different tool, and I'm going to pop this out. So hang on just 2 seconds. Okay, success. So basically, I had to take this tool, and I mentioned to you that I had clipped the sharp tip off, but I had to clip it again. So it was kind of glancing. It was making like glancing blows off the back side of the detent ball. And so I just clipped it off again and started with like a new piece that was slightly, you know, this is tapered. So it was slightly bigger diameter, and gave it a couple of taps, and it didn't give up easy, but it did give it up. So that's the important part. So now, basically what happened is I've got his detent ball out, and I'm going to show you very carefully because I just have it sitting on top of this hole because I kind of wanted to, you know, size it. Whoop. And so now it's down on my mat. And so we're going to pick this up, if it will pick up. Yep. Okay. So basically what's going to happen, right, is I've got, I'm going to clean this detent ball hole up in the lock bar with alcohol and make sure that it is like super duper clean. And I'm going to grab this with another pair of tweezers because I don't trust those other ones. Yeah, this is better. So basically, I'm going to just set it. I'm going to put like a little bit of that dual component epoxy on there. And then that is going to set on there just like that. And it's going to be hard to see because I can't tip it too much. But that is probably, it may be twice as high as the ball was when it was just like pressed into its little hole because it was barely sticking out. And so this gives it a lot more, right? And that is going to fix the problem definitely with the rubbing here on the sides of this where it's popping off the, you know, the blade tang is rubbing here. That's going to solve that problem like immediately. And then once that's done, I'll start making adjustments. The mistake that I made with mine is I didn't realize this until the very last thing. And so with this guy's knife, I'm actually like, because I've learned, I'm doing that first, right? Because that is the most important part. Because once you change this dimension, which it has to, then you know, can dial in all the other dimensions. But doing this first, it's going to solve the biggest problem he's got, and then we kind of go from there. So basically, I'm going to take this detent ball again and set it right here inside that O for Knife Joy. So I know where that is, and we're going to clean this up. And then I'm also going to clean that detent ball up. And I'm going to take alcohol pads, and we're going to, because I want to give that adhesive. I never had a problem with mine, and especially because I'm working on like lock stick and everything else. After I did this same exact thing to my knife, I washed it for a while, right? Because I didn't really trust that adhesive. It's very strong, but it was different. It's like not to spec anymore. Not that this Riot knife ever was, because they screwed this up in several different ways. But I made a change, and so I watched it for a long time after that. And the detent ball that I glued in, just like I'm going to do this one, it's not going anywhere. Like, that will be on there forever. And if it's held up to, probably 1,000 actuations, for me just sitting here in the evening sometimes and trying to solve this lock stick issue or the squeak, I know it's going to work on this one. So that part is going to be easy. So what I'm going to do is basically clean this little hole out. And I wish I had something else that's like super small that I could kind of put down in that hole, because these are so pointy. It makes it kind of tough. And I can't even really, there it is. Yeah, that's too big. So I gotta find something to stick down in there and take some of this pad with it. So what am I going to use? Because this is kind of the smallest, pointiest little thing I've got. There we go. There we go. Okay, so that's cleaning up. And it doesn't have to be much. And it doesn't even really have to be down inside that hole, because that detent ball is not going to be inside that hole anymore. It's going to be sitting right on top of it. So I think this is going to work just fine. So I got to find that hole again, which is right here. And then we're just going to work this pad. Just like this. And we're going to find it again, which is right here. And we're going to do it some more. And then I'm not going to touch it bare-handed after I get this clean. Yep. Okay, so I got that. And then I'm also going to take this detent ball and I'm going to put it on this pad, and I'm going to kind of work that a little bit. And again, I have to kind of, because I tap this out with, tool steel. I don't know how tough that ceramic ball is. It seemed pretty tough, but I got to make sure that I'm putting like the smoothest possible side away facing the blade to get a smooth action. And after we do this, I'm still going to kind of micro polish this detent ball, just to make sure that it's all super smooth. And I've got a magnifying glass, and so I'm probably going to look at this just to make sure that it's like smooth all the way around. So we're going to put that back right there, and then that should be clean. So the only thing I am going to do is I want to break this edge. I'm not filing to, remove any material, but the end of this file, you can see how small that file is. So it goes like all the way through. and it is tapered. And so basically I just want to scratch this surface right here to give the adhesive a place to grab onto this. And then it's already, it's going to grab onto the ball because it's kind of, form a little cup shape around the bottom half of that detent ball. And so I'm just going to kind of rough this area up just a hair. And a lot of it is just, like I'm not going to be able to see it. You'd have to have, put it under a microscope probably to see a scratch pattern or anything like that. And so that is going to be it. So we're going to do that. And then I'm going to mix up a little epoxy. And it's going to take just a second. So 2 seconds. Okay. So I've got the epoxy mixed up, and you can see it right there. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a new clean swab, and I'm just going to put a little bit on the end of that swab. And it's not going to take much. So it's probably about that much, right? But I got that epoxy mixed up really well. And so this should do the trick. So now I'm going to just touch that little hole. And make sure that I've got it kind of all the way around. And a little bit into the hole itself. And I want just a little bit more. Just like that. And then we're going to take this detent ball and we're going to put it right on top. And it's kind of important. And the detent ball just stuck on, there we go. Okay. So now I got the detent ball, whoop, here we go. Now I got the detent ball stuck on top of its little hole, and I'm just going to put a little pressure right there and make sure that it's seated all the way around, which it is. And because it's stuck on there now, right, I can turn it over, it's not going to go anywhere. I'll show you how far or how much farther it kind of sticks out than it did before, because it's like a night and day difference. And this glue is probably going to end up making a huge mess somewhere. All right. So now that detent ball sticks up that much. And that is quite a bit. When I'm looking at it here, it may be hard to see on camera, but you'd have to kind of remember, and you can go back and look, how much it stuck out before. This is probably close to twice as much, because when I first took this knife apart, that detent ball barely stuck out at all. And just looking at it, you could tell immediately, like it never stood a chance of, traversing through that ramp. But now it does. And so this is what I did to mine, and this is what's going to work on this one. So now what we're going to do is I need to let this sit for a while. And I think when I did mine, I let it sit for a couple of hours. This is pretty good adhesive, and I use it quite a bit for a lot of different things. It worked like a champ on my knife. But I don't want to, kind of use it too quick or anything like that. I want to make sure that I give it enough time. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give it enough time. And I just want to look. Yeah, that's going to be great. I think that's going to be awesome. Okay, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can do. Um, I'm going to bend this pocket clip just a little bit. That's not going to take much to do. And it's barely, out anyway. It just kind of rattles. What else? We're going to go ahead and polish this. I wish you could see that little traverse line and down there like I can see it, because it would really help this whole story. You can kind of see it right there. Let me see if I can find it. Right there. You can kind of see where the sheen changes, and it's brighter towards the end of the drop-off where the the lockup area is ground. You can see where it changes, and that's because that detent ball has not been touching that metal at all. And so that's kind of what's going on. But I could feel it kind of drop into that ramp. So I'm going to polish this a little bit. So I'm going to take some... let's see. 2 seconds. We're going to find some sandpaper. That is 2,500. So this is 3,000. So we're going to polish that detent ramp with some 3,000 grit sandpaper. And kind of see how that does, because it should make a difference. Okay, so we got that, and I'm just going to reach in here kind of like this and just kind of work this ramp, and hopefully it's going to smooth it out even more. It's fun working on this, but the whole time I am so kind of mad at Riot because this isn't, I was thinking, okay, mine, maybe it's a one-off, maybe some, house husband got in there and tried to like fix something or whatever, and they didn't know what they were doing and kind of made it worse, or whatever. But, this is the second one that I've been involved with, and it has exactly the same problem. This is a Riot problem, and I feel like going down there and knocking on the door and asking for the president of Riot and just telling him that he owes everybody some money, because people are buying these for, I don't know what they were new. They could have been pretty expensive new, but I know now it varies. It's probably right around $300, a little more, a little less. I've seen it for $450, and when I was looking to buy one just to experiment with, I was gonna. I was shopping, so I wanted to kind of get a deal, but I was gonna buy another one, just because I was that curious, like what in the world happened to mine, and is the same on all of them. And now I don't have to, because I was sent one to work on, and I have got a really good feeling about this. I think we're going to be able to fix this right up, and it's going to be awesome. The only thing, it's still not going to have, probably a super hydraulic drop shut blade like I like, but you can't have everything. Mine doesn't have it either. Wish it did, but it does not. All right, so let's see what that looks like. So that looks a lot smoother down in there. I don't see any like grooves that it's having to traverse over. So I want to say this is probably going to be great. I don't feel like any edge right there. The lockup still looks really good. That was pretty good machining they did right there at the end of the blade for the lockup area. And so that all looks good. And yeah, that ramp feels pretty good. Does it? It feels like there's something right at the end. Like almost like a burr, a little tiny burr right at the end of that ramp. And I can't tell. No, I don't think so. It is a sharp edge though. So I'm going to hit this just a little with one of my super files just to kind of ease this edge. And kind of round it over a little bit because it makes me nervous that there's a little bit of a, feels like a little burr there, but that's gone now. So it might have just been like right where they machined it. It left like a little tiny burr there. All right, so that's gone. That's polished. That's got to be smoother. This detent ball is up much higher than it was, and so that is going to solve that part of the problem. So we got those things going on. The scales look great. I can go ahead and put a little more on this just to kind of solve that little rattle. Let me see. So that should be this side. Yeah, even putting pressure down right here where the screw would be, you can see it kind of rocks back and forth. Just a little. So what I'm going to do is Ranger bands, kids. So I'm going to put a Ranger band on this, and I'm going to squeeze it a little bit, and we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to put this right over all of this, and then all I want to do is kind of squeeze this just a hair. Just like this. And I'm sorry I'm doing this off camera. I know it sucks. But I got to hold it up close to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. Because I really want this kind of perfect. I want to do to this knife the things that I couldn't do to mine because it was like too late, you know? So I want to make sure this one turns out better than mine, actually. Plus, it's not my knife, and so it has to be better than mine. Okay, so we're going to check this one more time, and that should actually have, yeah. So now, and you can see, you know, the Ranger bands totally protected this. It's in great shape. There's no, I think there was already like a little mark on there, and there's some little snails down here. There was a mark down here at the end right there that was already there. But now when you put this back together, it sets just right and there's no rattle. So I've got that basically pinched. It's all the way down inside its two little troughs. And so now it's kind of good to go. So that part's fixed. So we're fixing knives one clip at a time, people. All right. So I guess while we're here, because when I put this back together, I have a feeling that I don't know how much I'm going to have to change this detent, but it may not be any at all, because I, in effect, have changed the detent, you know, by changing that, the distance of the detent ball. And so while we're waiting for this to set up, I'm going to go ahead and do some polishing and stuff. He's got his little pivot collars here, so I'm going to put that over there, and then there's another one right here. And if this one wants to stay in there, then that's going to be fine. No, I think it almost came out. So is that going to come out? Nope. So that one's just staying there, which is great. So this one's just kind of like mine. I believe this is a screw that's in the pivot. This is a captive pivot, and you can see the flat right there on the lock side. And so I'm going to go ahead. This is smooth, but you can see some kind of machining marks and stuff in there where the blade's been kind of traveling around it. And so I'm going to go ahead and just polish this up real quick. So that is going to be with one of these. And because this is already pretty clean, I'm just going to use this kind of middle grit. And it's not even really a grit, whatever you call this, whatever the ladies call this when they're doing their nails. That's kind of what this is going to be. And it's going to clean it right up, because these things really are amazing. Everybody needs to be buying these little blocks. And that is already like much, much cleaner. Yep, just kind of polishing. And so you can see that does look better and it feels smoother. So we're going to go with that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm almost positive those are skiffs. Are they? See, these are not skiffs. So these are skiffs, not these. These. Okay, so yeah, those actually are skiffs that he's got in there, which is cool. That's the same thing. And so I've probably already done this on my other video, but just because we're holding this bearing, that's going to be a 1/16. For anyone out there with an AVNT, I know you're working on it. If it's an AVNT, you are working on it. But the pivot is small. So this is a 3/16 pivot and a 1/16 bearing. So that is the size skiff that you would buy. All right, so we got that. So we're going to go ahead and flush out these. I may put a little of my super grease on the pivot because I'm having such good luck with it. And if anybody else had sent me a knife, you know, to just tune or work on or whatever, that's what I would do actually. So I'm going to do that in this case also, because I want it to be as smooth as possible. And it is going to be. So that blade, or this is actually the little rod that came out. And this is still screwed in, so that rod just kind of sits right there. All right, so that's clean. So I'm going to flush out these bearings because I don't know what kind of oil is in there. They feel actually, they're all moving and everything. I'm not getting much residue on my fingers, so I think these were kind of dry, which is cool. And so when I flush them, I actually use the ultralight, right, to just flush bearings with. I would never use it to lubricate a bearing with and keep it there, but I'll use it to flush them because to me, that's kind of the only thing this is good for. So I'm just going to, and this is such low viscosity, it's kind of running through that skiff around those bearings, which is cool. And kind of disappearing on the top. And that's kind of awesome. So we're just going to work these bearings a little bit. And they were not dirty at all, but they were maybe just a little dry. Okay, so we got that. And then when I reassemble this, I'm actually going to use just a little bit of 85 weight nano oil on those and just kind of leave a residue. And then for the pivot, I'm going to use the tungsten disulfide grease that I use. And this is excellent on pivots. And so this knife is going to do everything that it can do. And these are all ready. And these are all ready. Okay. So now we're kind of at a point where I'm going to let this detent ball sit and cure for at least another couple of hours. And so what I'm going to do is pause the video, and when we come back, this is going to be ready to reassemble. I'm going to go ahead, it'll be like, and it's the same thing that I do with mine. I gave it a couple of hours, and I reassembled it because it sets up in that time. It's actually a faster, cure time than that. But I use 24 hours as a rule with dual component epoxies and whatever. So we're going to let this sit for a couple of hours, and then we're going to come back and we're going to reassemble this. We're going to see, without making any other change, I have to change the pivot a little bit because I've taken it apart. And so, but I'm not going to change the detent, and move this lock bar or whatever. And we're just going to see, he had a little bit of pivot lash because this hole has seen some work, and I'm not sure what happened with that. It was before it got to me. And so we're going to just give it some time. So I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back, we're going to start reassembling everything. So I'll see you guys in just a little bit. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours, and we're going to check in on our little detent ball and see how everything is going. It should have set up by now enough to reassemble this knife and test it, and that actually feels really good. And so that's what we're going to do. We've got that detent ball on there, and it is actually sticks out much farther than it did. And so let's see how good we did. So I'm going to be back in this knife again because I'm just reassembling this to check this part, right? But there's going to be some other adjustments, and so I'm not going to fully lubricate all this and everything else right now. Those bearings are lubricated. I just kind of flushed them out. It doesn't have a final lube on there, but it's good enough just to test, and that is what we're going to do. So this is a captive pivot. I'm going to turn this back towards the back of the knife. And I will say on this particular one, they did a much better job machining that little flat in there, because on mine they did a terrible job, and there was like a big burr kind of like right in the middle of that. It was huge. You could barely get it back together. But this one looks like they, did a much better job. So that's great. It's good that they did a good job on something on this knife. So we're going to throw these washers back in there, and these have actually been installed both ways. So it doesn't really matter which way they go in this time. And then we're going to set this little skiff in there. And then I'm still kind of worried about that hole on the blade for the detent ball, because that's pretty big. I don't know how that's going to work out, but we're going to see. And so let's see, I've got a pin to put back here. And I've got a blade stop pin to put in here, which we're going to do just like that. So that is back. Everything else, let's see, I'm going to put this other bearing here, and I'm going to set this other washer there. And again, these have both been installed in kind of both directions. Okay, so we've got a pocket clip and a pocket clip screw, and then we've got the pivot, and then a couple of body screws. So we're going to go ahead and put this back together. So I'm going to start by nesting its little liner into this scale, and then we're going to set this kind of back in there just like this, and I got a couple of pins to line up, and then we're going to set this pivot back in there, or pivot screw. And we're going to kind of give it an initial snug to establish blade centering before we run it back in the handle and make sure that it doesn't hit anything. And so okay, so it's because that detent hole is so big. So it's actually kind of catching. There damn sure isn't any detent lash nail, and I haven't adjusted the detent, like the lock bar or anything. But this is like rock solid. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it back up, and I'm going to break that edge just like I did on mine to help that detent ball. But if you do it right, it's not going to induce any kind of, detent lash or anything, because this is solid. Like, there is no movement here, and there was before. So making that detent ball stick out further did actually take care of this, but it did it so well, and that hole is so big on his blade that I don't really want to, because that detent ball is still fresh. So I don't want to risk messing anything up, but I can see where that actually worked. So what I'm going to do is pull this up just a little bit and relieve some of that pressure, and then I'm going to take that out. And then we're going to take the scale back off. So it's nice to know that it actually, fixed something. So we got those. We're going to set those body screws back over there because I'm not going to use them just yet. And then I'm going to take this scale off. And that still looks really good. Yeah, that detent ball hole is just huge. And so now that detent ball really wants to just like kind of go home and stay there. So we're going to help it out. And basically the way I did mine was I just came in here like this, and I just eased this edge just a little bit, and I was super careful the way that I did it, and it takes a little bit to do, and you kind of have to go like one direction for the most part and just kind of scrape, because this is a really sharp file and it will definitely you know, do a number on this steel, exactly kind of what you want it to do. But I just want to do this a little bit at a time. And it's gonna actually be excuse me, kind of hard to see the difference that I'm making. And it was the same exact thing on mine. Like, it was hard to see that I had done anything at all, but it sure did make a difference. And it got my flipper back where I had none before. So we're just going to kind of work this edge at an angle. Just to kind of help that detent ball come up out of that hole again. And so I didn't do much, but we're going to try it. And this is going to be one of those knives that we're going to be in and out of like several times, you know. But a lot of this stuff I can do without putting the body screws back in and everything else. You know, it's just a pivot screw. So it won't be that bad. I'm going to clean some of this out now, because I've got some little burrs in there. And you can kind of see, like, those are the burrs that I just put in there. Some of that might have been in there from before because I didn't clean this out, you know, before. But I doubt it. I think that's just the little burrs that I put in there just now by my filing. So we're going to clean this up and kind of see what it looks like. Yeah, so I got a little material out of there. So let's see. I can see where the edge of that hole is broken, and it's just a little bit. It's hard to even see like on camera, but you can definitely see, like I showed before, the it's almost like it was countersunk, like somebody put something in there just to widen that entire hole up, and that's what caused the detent lash. And so we are fixing it. And we're going to go ahead and set this blade back in there and tighten that pivot up and see how it did, because it should have made a difference. It's probably not huge. I'll probably have to take it apart and do it again, you know, maybe 2 or 3 more times, but I want to go slow, because once you take too much material out, you know, there's no putting it back. So it's better to just take your time, kind of do a little bit at a time. Our detent ball still hanging in there, and I'm going to fish around. There it is. So just like that. So we're going to try this detent again, or this whatever I'm trying to say, pivot screw. So we're doing this, and then we're going to see how much of a difference that made. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up, and then we're going to run this home, and then I want to see. So that did make a little difference, but it's not enough. So we're doing it some more. All right, so we're going in from this direction. And I don't know if one of these other, because I'm just going to put the tip in there and just going to, rotate it around a little bit to break that one edge on that one side. So I don't know if it's better to use a different file. I'm going to try this one because I just want the edge. The problem with this super small file, this is only, it's like 2mm, and that is just a super fine point. And so when you get it in there, it's hard to even maneuver it around. But this one, I think I can put it in there and just rotate it. I will say this one has like some excess. These are kind of, they're not expensive probably. And this little diamond dust on here, I don't know if you can see where the diamond dust itself at the end is kind of chunky, like there's a couple of big chunks there. And so when you're trying to do like really fine work, that's not helping anything. So I'm going to dress this a little bit. And kind of knock those chunks off there and make it a little more uniform. And right here. Yeah, that's better. So I bought this actually. I would never use this to sharpen a knife, but I use it all the time to dress parts and things like that. And it actually really does pretty well for that. So what I'm going to do now is just put this in there and just kind of rotate it against that one edge. And I don't know if that's going to work or not like I want it to. I may end up having to go back to the other file. It's not really what I want. So we're just going to try this some more, because this eventually will get it. Okay, so we're going to clean this out again, so I'm not running a bunch of abrasives across that detent ball. And that actually looks a little bit longer to me. And again, you might not be able to tell because it's like barely anything at all. But I'm just trying to break that edge where it goes off on its traverse across the blade tang, and just help it jump out of that, a little easier. So we're going to put this together one more time. Just the pivot section. Hope this works. I really like to fix this knife up. Add another AVNT to my resume. All right, so we got this. And I've got these, and then we're going to set this, and that's all together. And I'm going to find that blade stop pin hole, which apparently I am, there we go. And so this little flat is off a little bit. So I need to turn it. Probably kind of just like that. And that should be it. So we're going to try this pivot screw again and see how we're doing. Okay, here we go. Pops right in. Okay, so we're getting much, much closer. There still is no detent lash at all. That's a really solid lockup, and it pops out a lot better. But I want it to pop out a little smoother than that. It's going to be hard to flick this without that pocket clip. Okay. All right, so one more time of that, and that should be like really close. And then we're going to start adjusting the lock bar, because that's actually, this is making a difference, and this is doing what I want. So we're going to pull this blade one more time. And we're going to do just a little bit more. And I think I need to come in from like the side just a hair. Because the detent ball is round, and so I'm still kind of, you know, if I do this in like a really teardrop shape, it's going to help a little, but the edges of the ball are still going to be hopping up a little bit around the edges, you know, the outside diameter of that circle. So you got to kind of break it kind of even at a 45, and you want to go down deep enough where it makes a difference, but you can't go too deep, because then you'll induce some detent lash. So just a little. Very carefully. Also, don't want to scratch up the blade tang or anything. So, okay, so we're going to go with that, and we're going to give it one more shot, and I'm going to clean this up again. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one, because it has served us well, and its time is done. Okay, and I'm getting rid of this one too. And so that looks like it's going to do pretty well. We're going to see. All right. So we're trying this again. And when I was doing my knife, I probably had this open 20, 30 times, like quite a bit. And that was over the course, like in the beginning, you know, like I'm working on this one now. You know, it was a lot of time, or many times in a short, you know, time span. But then I would just let it sit, and I wouldn't do anything with it for a week, and then I'd come back and I'd do something else. And it was just a whole ordeal. Okay. So, just like that. And we're going for the pivot screw one more time. Gonna give it a snug. And this is not set back here this time. So we gotta watch that. And I think that is probably because I had it set off center of one of these little honeycomb deals. And so it pushed the pivot pin down a little bit. So we're gonna reset that. Because something didn't go back. I was wondering why. It didn't look like I had a lot of room sticking up above that, you know, bearing for that washer. So I'm going to kind of hold the bottom of the other side of the pivot while I put this together this time. And that went together right. So now we're doing the pivot screw again, and we're doing the driver again. And we are snugging it up, and that is set right. Okay. All right. So that actually feels not too bad, but I don't have a flipper, so I got to do it a little more. I could reverse flick it, but yeah, it's just sticking a little bit too much to use that flipper. Yep. So we're doing it one more time, or two more times, because I know this is how I got my flipper back. You know, one thing I do want to check though, actually, I want to go ahead and traverse that ramp while we're doing all this to make sure that that made a difference on that ramp too. Because I was so fixated on the detent ball hole. So that detent ball is out just exactly as much as mine was. And I wonder if this is because of the grinding that was done, because I actually polished the end of my lock bar. Because that detent ball now, like I can feel when it comes out of its little ramp. Like right now, it's out of the ramp completely. And it's just about to go in the ramp. And if you look, you can see that lock bar kind of going in. And I think that detent ball is traversing that entire ramp now. So I think we got something else going on now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on that little detent ball hole again and get that right. And his is a little different because his detent ball hole was like so big around. Mine was not like that. Mine was like a clean hole that had never been kind of messed with. And so this one, something happened to it along the way somewhere. But we're going to be able to fix it. And then when we do that, I'm also going to polish this right here. And actually I can see it almost looks like a little burr right there at the end. And it could be that that is what's making that happen. So we're going to polish that. And I'm actually going to polish it on my polisher and kind of see how that goes. Because I don't think, because there is a burr. Yeah. So that just needs some work. And so does this. So we're going to do this one first. And we're going to continue on with this. Now let's see, if this is closed, so let's say that I've got, it would be this other side. So if I've got this closed and the detent ball is there, the pivot lash is kind of going this way, or it was, and there's none now. And so I think if I don't touch the outside hole there, and it's still going to like suck it in to the stop, then I shouldn't induce any pivot lash. And I'm sorry there's such long periods where I'm just kind of concentrating. And so I'm not narrating as much when I'm doing that. I'm just trying to really, keep my head in the game. Because again, I'm working on somebody else's knife. And the person that sent this to me, trusted me to work on his knife. And so I want to do a really good job and not make a mistake or mess something up. Because it's a pretty big deal, trusting someone else enough to like work on your stuff. I have trust issues. Every time I get my car worked on, like I found one guy, I've tried to take it to a dealership, and I will never do that again. I live just down the road from the dealership that works on my car, and I can't stand that dealership. They do terrible work, and I just don't trust them. I don't trust people to do a good job. But I found like a guy that's, I think he's Estonian or Ukrainian or something, and he's got, like, this guy is a pro. He works on German cars, and he knows what he's doing, and he shows up, and he's like professional as hell. And his whole little, thing, he's got a van, and it's all neat as a pin, and so I trust him. But I have trust issues in general. Like, I just don't trust people, and not everyone's like that, but I don't trust a lot of people to do a good job, or care. And so, The fact that someone I didn't even know sent me a knife to work on, that says a lot, you know, and I kind of appreciate it. All right, so we're going to try this one more time. And actually, I'm pretty sure that, like, this is getting closer. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go hit this on a buffer real quick. It's going to buff the detent ball a little bit and make it smooth, but I also want to buff this area here before I put it back together again, because this has seen some action. And so I just want to, I don't think I can hand buff that. We can try. I just don't want to. No, that's going to be too. All right, so 2 seconds. Okay, so I hit that on a polisher and I kind of polished it up a little bit. I polished the detent ball again, and so let's see what that does. I also took just a hair out of the detent of the lock bar because we added a lot. And we probably added, like, if I had to guess, the difference in that detent ball, it's probably about that much, maybe that much. So we might have added like 15 or 20 thousandths just by bringing this detent ball, you know, out more. And so, because that's a big difference, like it's really out, you know, quite a bit now. Let's see if we can put it there in front of that blade. So you can see, like, it's out there and it's rock solid. It's not going anywhere. It just took buffing like a champ in there. So we're going to go ahead and put this back together and try it again and see what happens. And I've got washer down here at the bottom, and then I've got a bearing, and I've got a pin back here for the back spacer, and then I've got the old blade, and I've got another bearing. And last time I actually picked it up and held the bottom of the pivot in, just like that. And so I'm going to try that again because that worked out pretty well. And then I'm going to go ahead and nest this and put this back. Nope. So that flat is off a little bit. So it needs to go this way, just like that. So this should go back. Yep. Just like that. All right. So now I'm going to try the pivot screw again. And I know this is kind of like boring for a lot of viewers. The reason I'm doing it this way is for the guy who owns this knife, because I want him to see kind of what I'm doing step by step and everything to be, you know, on camera. And so that's kind of why I'm doing this video this way. I know it's not, you know, make for great entertainment for most people, but, you know. All right, so we're pretty close now. It's going to take just a little bit more. So we got a flipper and we are drop shut. We have no detent lash and it's holding it in there really well, but it's nothing like it was. So it's letting it come back out on top of the blade. I can see that the detent ball is holding it up all the way. Yeah. So that ramp is doing exactly what it's supposed to do now because I can see the gap. So when I hold it up to the light like this, I've got my computer screen is right there and it's pretty bright. And so I can hold this up to the light and kind of look through it. And I can see where the detent ball is, like right now, it's up on the blade tang. And then I come down and I start going into the ramp and I can see the ball going into the ramp. And then before it gets to the end, yeah. So what I'm feeling right there is it's traversed through the ramp. And so there's some ridges in that ramp. That's kind of what I'm feeling. So we're going to take care of that. But everything else, I think I might hit that little detent hole just a hair more. And I've still got, like, I'm going to be able to achieve blade centering, I think. And all of that's going to be good. Yep. And then the flipper feels really crispy and nice. So I've still got a little lock rock. So that is the next thing. All right. So for the lock rock, if I put just a hair pressure on this locking lock bar, then it goes away. So basically what I have to do, I took some of that because you can barely feel that. But I don't want to feel any of that. So I'm going to put that little bit of detent back in that I took out, and it was hardly anything at all. And then I'm going to hit that detent ball hole again. And then I want to dress the edge of the lock bar because I polished it, but I didn't actually. Oh no, I want to polish the bottom of that or reprofile the bottom of the ramp because that's what I'm feeling. And it's hard to see, but I can see little ridges down in the bottom of that detent ramp, and you'll never be able to see it on camera, I don't believe, but I can see or I can feel little ridges in there, like in the bottom of that detent ramp. And so that's what I'm feeling actually, because it's traversing all the way and I can see it disappear and I can see it go down in there and I can watch the side of that detent ball as it does all of that stuff. So, yep. All right. So a couple things. I'm going to hit this detent ball hole one more time, just a little bit more, because that is making a difference. But I'm getting ready to put a little bit of detent back into it to solve that lock rock, which is not bad. Like, it's hardly any, and it's not going to take a lot to fix that. Okay, so that is going to be it for that. And I'm going to clean it out one last time. And I'm going to have to grab another handful of swabs pretty soon. And then once I put it back together this last time, I'm going to go ahead and lube everything up because I think we're going to be super close. Because I know just from looking and seeing kind of what it's doing, like how much detent it's going to take to solve that lock rock because it's not a lot. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I've dressed the edges of this lock bar at the end. Whoops. Yeah, so that is pretty important. And let's see, let me get a good, that is just outside, and it's barely outside it at all. It's almost like a perfectly straight line. Let's see if I can get it where you can see it too. So if I bring like right there, you can kind of see like it's almost a perfectly straight line. Like you can see a gap there, but it's because it's like crooked. So if I bring it where that's a straight line on the top of the pivot area of this, that's pretty much a straight line. And the reason I want to look at that so close is because I'm going to tuck something under here and I'm going to dress the edges, because I swear I can see a little burr left. It's like nice and polished now, but it's still there. And so I'm going to slip something in there, and then I'm going to hit that with a little file, and I got to see what I'm going to put in there. I could probably just use this and just fold it the other way and kind of slip this right in there so it doesn't scratch up the inside of his liner there. And so, yeah, that should work. So now what I need is a flat file, which is going to be right over here. And so I'm going to use this one. All right. So, nope. That is not flat. That has a bevel on it. So I do not want that one. And I do not want this one. So we're going to go flat, man. I need flat. So that's going to be this, because it's small. It's not as wide as some of those other flat ones. Yep. So this is going to work. I just need to find a way to get down low enough. And then I'm going to hit this again on the polisher. Yeah, that's getting close. Okay, so what I need to be, this is perfect. So I need to be here. So I can get my hand lower than this whole thing. And then I need to hold this really still. Then I need to come in here and do this other side. And so I'm not hitting like the lockup face at all. I'm not changing that dimension. It already has a little bit of lock rock, and so I don't want to add to it. All I'm doing is the top surface where there's like a little burr. And I need that to be as smooth as possible. Because all lock bars pretty much will ride on the blade tank, you know, to some extent, you know, and a lot of times you can't even feel it. Like not every blade has a detent ramp. And so a lot of times, you know, right when the detent ball will kind of pop off the end of the blade, that's sometimes what you hear, like it's like a double little click. Well, the first click you hear is the lock bar slapping against the blade tang, you know? And you can hear it, but most of the time it's like really smooth, and so you don't really feel it, and it doesn't bother you. And then right after that, you hear the second click, and that is the lock bar moving over into position and locking up against the lockup area on the blade. And so all that happens really quick, and sometimes, you know, it's hard to distinguish that it's even two sounds, and at other times you can definitely tell. And so, you know, they all kind of ride on the blade tang to a certain extent. And so it's not the end of the world. But I think when that happens, it needs to be like, you know, everything needs to be really smooth. So that is completely deburred now. I've got like no little burr left, and I only did the very edge. And so I'm going to go and polish this one more time, and we're going to kind of go with it, and we're going to see what happens. And then I've got that dress for the last time probably, and after I do this, I'm going to put like a little bit of detent back in there, and then we're going to lube it up, and we're going to put it together and see how we did. So 2 seconds. Okay, so this is now polished for the last time, and the edge of that lock bar is pretty damn smooth. Our detent ball is still holding in there tight, and it is also pretty damn smooth. So there's a couple of things that are left, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put back, and it's not going to be a lot. It's going to end up being maybe, you know, 10,000, something like that, of detent. And so I'm going to do that now. And that may be it. Yeah, we're going to go with that. So that right there, I think, is going to solve the lock rock issue. And this is super smooth now. And so I think that should be okay with that. So now what I want to do, just kind of one of the last things, is I can feel the traverse through this this ramp. And so I want to dress this ramp a little bit. And I'm going to do it with both a file, because it could be that that ramp, you know, kind of wasn't put in there, or it could have been worked on, I have no idea. But I'm not going to make it like deeper, really, much deeper, because I can't afford to do that. But I want it to be smooth with no ridges that kind of go laterally across, you know. And sometimes that is just from not holding a file in the right position, or, you know, whatever. But I need there, you know, if it had ridges that went a long way through the ramp like that, then the detent ball wouldn't pick them up. You know, it would just ride right beside them or on top of it or whatever. But if they go laterally across, then, you know, and I've said this before, that detent ball is just like a stylus on a turntable. And so it's going to pick every little thing up that it feels and try and sing you a song. And so I need that to be like super smooth. And I want to give it a little at the very edge. And again, not a lot, because, you know, we've already kind of maxed out our detent ball, and so I'm not going to be able to gain any height, and I just want that deburred. Okay, and then what we're going to do is run this sandpaper through there one more time to make sure that it's all super polished, or as much as possible. And then we're going to lube it up and we're going to put it together and we're going to see how we did. And I have a feeling that it's going to be probably much better than mine. The back flipper might be kind of tough in the beginning. I don't think this had lock stick, and we haven't done anything to, exacerbate that. The only thing is, solving some of this, you have to put a little detent in, and so it could be that, some of that stuff is going to have to work in and take time, like mine. I'm still working on it, one day that lock stick or lock squeak or whatever I've got will go away, and I'll pick that up and I'll flip it a bunch of times and I won't even notice it, and what a joyous day that will be. But it's kind of a work in progress. So that looks pretty smooth. All right, here we go, folks. This is going to be it. I got a good feeling. So we're going to put this pivot back in, and it's going to go in just like that. And then I'm going to turn it so I can pick up the flat in the lock side scale. And then because I'm going to put grease on there, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put just a little bit of lube on these bearings because this is going to be my, I got kind of a good feeling. I think it's all going to come together. So I'm going to get some more of these swabs, which I buy in the bulk pack because I use a ton of these things. And I've switched from green to black. So it fits my mood better. All right, so we're going to put some oil on this swab. Maybe, there we go. And then I'm going to apply it sparingly on top of this skiff right here. And that's all that's going to need. And then I'm going to grab another one of these and we're going to oil up or grease up this pivot. And this stuff is super slick. I love this stuff. I've used this on, I don't know, over the past 2 weeks or so, every knife that I've gotten in and taken apart, I've used this and it just does great. I wish I had been using this all along. So that, and then I'm going to take another and kind of clean that up a little bit because it doesn't take a lot of this stuff. It's crazy slick. Okay, so we got that. And we're going to set the blade. And then we're going to set this other. And so what I'm going to do with this is just give it a little bit down here. But this is such, like it's heavy. And so it's not going to weep anywhere. There's not going to be oil squeezing out of the pivot screws or anything else. It's going to just stay right there and work until it's taken back out and replaced, which is great. All right, so we got that. Just like that. And then I'm going to nest this liner. And I've got that pin is still there. And so I'm putting the blade stop pin in. And my bearing washer doesn't want to act right. Okay, so now is the moment of truth. Just like that. So we're going to try the pivot screw. Give it a snug. Get rid of my trash. Okay, so there is no detent lash. Okay, so that action is super smooth now. The only thing that's left is I've got to add just a hair more detent. And then that is probably going to be it. I think after that it's going to be great. So we're going to put a little more detent in there. And I wish my knife had been able to live with this little bit of extra detent, because mine, when you take mine off and you hold it up like this, like, I mean, the lock bar is like way out, you know, because mine was like in much worse shape. All right, so we're adding some detent. And we're just going to go a little bit at a time. So I might have to open this up again, but that's okay because everything's kind of staying put. So we're going to do this. And I got a blade stop pin to find, and then I've got these to pop in there. And then we're doing this. Okay. Blade center is good. Detent is good. That was it. That was it, buddy. Okay. So let's see if everything works. There is no lock rock. There is no detent lash. I'm going to go ahead and put, because I know this is going to work, and so I'm going to put it all back together because I want to be able to flip this like a reverse flick, but I really need that pocket clip on there to do that. So we got this. And then, let's see, we got the filler screw over here, which I didn't touch. The other body screws are good. And so now we're going to put this adjusted pocket clip on there. And I'm going to see if I can stick this on to my driver. No. How about it'll hold upside down? If I can even grab it. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Clip's fixed. So just a normal flick that is solid as a rock. There is no lock rock or anything like that. That is perfect. And you're probably still running. It's kind of difficult to see because the engagement on this lock bar is kind of down lower, but I'd say you're still less than 50%, which I think mine is 50%, and that's why I've got lock stick so bad. But you're still running, you know, at about probably 40% or so, and so that's perfect. That's actually a lot. So we're going to adjust your pivot a little bit, but your drop shut just with no pivot adjustment at all, and your flipper feels great. Like, it's super easy to do. That feels really nice. It's very positive, and the work that we did on that detent ball hole kind of, like, you know, did its job. So now I'm going to see if I can adjust this and keep my blade center and see how smooth we can get this without losing blade centering. And the blade center just kind of fell off a little bit. That grease is still kind of running. That is smooth, man. That is smooth. All right, so the only thing that I can feel now is, and it's not near as bad as mine, yours doesn't make any noise or anything like that, but you can feel the lock disengaging, right? I wouldn't even call that lock stick, you know? I would just say you can feel it. And it's not that big of a deal. And that's going to wear in time, and that's going to drop off to where you just don't feel it at all. But the blade centering, it's kind of favoring the show side a little bit. I'm going to see how much I can tune this just with the pivot. So I'm going to put a little pressure, a little back pressure on this blade, and I'm going to work this pivot a little bit. And I can feel the blade going back and forth on my fingers right now. And so we're going to see how this pivot wants to be adjusted, basically. So I can't slip that detent. Your flipper is money. Reverse flick is money. And it is super smooth. I just won't be able to, and I said that in the very beginning of the video, because this is such a light little blade, I'm not going to be able to adjust it where it's hydraulic drop shut, because I would have to have the detent so loose, or the pivot so loose, and the detent will just be pushing it over, and so you'll lose blade centering. So it's like something's got to give. So basically, this is like super smooth action, but it is, you know, kind of dropped shut, or like shake shut, I guess. And that's about probably all I'm going to be able to do. So let me try just a little bit more. Nope. So it has to be a little tighter than that. And it really needs to be a little tighter than that. It's a good thing you got skips in here. All right, so all the lube is dispersed. I've got it adjusted like is you know, as finely tuned as I'm going to be able to tune this knife with all the things that we did. And it feels very smooth. So just a normal reverse flick like that, you've got no lock rock whatsoever. That's a very solid lockup. I know you can't see it on camera because I'm kind of like, when I test it, the whole thing moves, but there is no play there. And so we got that. And then when we are deploying the blade, it comes down on your ramp. You can feel it just a little bit when the ball starts traversing in that ramp, but it is smooth and it's not grinding at all because your lock bar is polished now and your detent ball is out there where it's supposed to be. And so that's good. Your detent ball hole is releasing the detent ball now better because I've, didn't put a ramp on it, but I used that edge. And so that's kind of where you're at. That is probably the only thing that I will be able to do besides, and this, and you can't really even feel it. It depends on how you release it, right? So if you push on this lock bar and you push it this way, or just kind of put your thumb in there, you're going to feel it, against the lockup area of the blade. But if you push more laterally, then, you feel it a lot less. But the more that you actuate the knife, it's just going to, kind of solve itself. Because I don't think it's enough to be a problem. It's not even as much as like mine. Like you can, you could hear mine like a mile away. Listen, squeak. So, mine's crazy. Yeah. So yours is much better off than mine is. I don't know. I'll trade you. So yeah, yours is like pretty golden. And that's about all we're going to be able to do. All right. So brother, I appreciate you very much sending me this knife and letting me work on it on camera. It means a lot, man. I really do appreciate it. I'm not kidding. So what I'm going to do is wrap this up. I've got your other knife here, and I'm going to be doing a review on that also. It's probably going to be like maybe tomorrow or something. I'll get it filmed. And then I'm going to send these back to you. So don't worry about the shipping. I'm going to send this back to you, priority, and that is my little thank you for sending this to me in the first place. There is no charge, of course, for working on any of this because I enjoy it. And I was able to get some content out of it, so I would never charge for something like that. But, you're a cool mofo, and I appreciate you, and hang on to this knife because it's kind of awesome. So have a good one, man, and thank y'all for watching.